Okay, today I'm going to start again a series I've done before called the manifestation process. Today is an overview of 5 steps that will follow. I'll go through all 5 steps right now. But it's important to revisit the principles that we go by, that we try to live our lives by, and just see if there's ways that we can work with them better. I have pointed out that we can become so familiar with ideas that we don't really consciously employ them. We're not really putting them into practice in our daily life. So I think this is a very simple 5-step process that we can look at, and it can remind us of how we can help make our lives better. One of the challenges that we have is, we pointed out many times, is that we're all spiritual beings going through a material or a human experience. We are souls that have taken on a body. And taking on a body means that we have stepped into the material realm, and that involves this thing we call manifestation. And this is something that we don't have to learn. We've already got it down. But it may not be so much to our liking, the kind of life that we're getting as the result of our being here. We may feel like we're victims of our birth or some limiting factor, and we would like to change that. I think most of us here probably have gotten past that. We realize that life is a projection or an expression of our consciousness, of how we see ourselves. And so we work from that level. But if we see things that we're expressing on a fairly routine basis, as Freud would have said, with monotonous regularity, we may be able to take a look at some habits that we're involved in that we can change. And so this is based on the work of Thomas Troward, and I know you're familiar with him just from what I've said, or at least vaguely familiar with him. But just a little bio here from Wikipedia. It says, after his retirement from the judiciary in 1896, and this was over in England, Troward set out to apply logic and a judicial weighing of evidence in the study of matters of cause and effect. The philosopher William James characterized Troward's Edinburgh Lectures on mental science as far and away the ablest statement of philosophy I have met, beautiful in its sustained clearness of thought and style, a really classic statement. And then, according to the Alcoholics Anonymous archivist, I'm not sure how you say that, Nell Wing, early AA members were strongly encouraged to read Thomas Troward's Edinburgh Lectures on mental science. And he was also the president of the INTA, the International New Thought Alliance, way back when. He's kind of the old school metaphysician. And one of the people, or one of the movements that were most influenced by him probably was religious science, Ernest Holmes. There was a businessman that asked Ernest Holmes if he would teach the Edinburgh Lectures, do a course on that, and that's kind of the beginning of the whole religious science movement. So he was a very influential person, and he's been very influential in my own life. He is a very difficult person to read, and I think that's because of the fact that he was a judge. He retired from that, and his language says the logic and judicial weighing of evidence. He approaches the connection between mind and the expression in a very intellectual way. And so you may find his writing a little bit tedious. It's writing back in that era also, the people used to write very long paragraphs, very long sentences, and so on. We've broken that down, make it a little bit easier to digest. But I still recommend his writings. He's got a ton of books out there, and most of them, I think, if not all of them, came from lectures that he gave. but very influential person. And he's one of these people that you read and you'll get an idea, just kind of everything lights up. And that may take a while. You know, you're reading along and thinking there's nothing here, and pretty soon he'll put out something that just kind of turns everything on. So you can get this book and through Amazon. I think we might have a copy back here. We've got a combination of 2 books of his, I think, in 1 volume back there. But I would recommend reading him. So the steps that I'm going to go over, you don't find them in specifically laid out in the Edinburgh Lectures, but that's where I got them, and they're woven throughout. So I pulled them out, and I have actually done some editing on them just to try to put them in a little bit more understandable language. So he says the first step is to form a clear picture of your desire, with the understanding that by so doing, you impress your desire upon the creative life force. And the creative life force is my term. I use that sometimes for the name God, or for the word God. And I like that term. It kind of takes the humanness away from God, if that makes sense. That God is the creative life force. It's that creative power that's working through us at all times, working through all things at all times. It is creative, it's living, and it is a force, so it's a creative life force. So this understanding takes this first step out of the region of fantasy. So form a clear picture of your desire with the understanding that by so doing, you impress your desire upon the creative life force. This understanding takes this first step out of the region of fantasy. Now, why this is important is because we're always carrying a mental picture of ourselves and of what we expect from life. And it is Emma Curtis Hopkins talked about this. It's not so much what we think as the vision we hold that influences our whole life. And we may not think about this. What is this? What does this mean? What is this vision that we hold? What we often do in creating a vision board or trying to develop a new vision for our life is we picture a circumstance, or we picture a better job, we picture meeting our soulmate, or we picture something out there that we would like to see manifest. It is very important to bring yourself into that picture, to make sure you're there, because that is what is already happening. Our life is as it is because of how we see ourselves. So we're not working with something outside of ourselves. We're working with a picture that includes us. And so, yes, we want more prosperity in our life. So that would include a vision of yourself. How would you feel if you were more prosperous? How would you see yourself? How would you think of yourself? That's part of the vision. It's a most important part, I think, actually. It's not so much making a thing happen, but to form a clear picture of your desire. And we'll go over this. I'll spend a lot of time on each one of these as we go along through this process. But we are doing that right now. And that's the most important thing. We're doing that right now. And we can analyze that picture, and it wouldn't hurt to do that. How do I really feel about myself? How do I really feel about my life? What do I believe about everything? That's the vision that I carry. That's that 4 months. I believe there's 4 months. I believe that certain things have to happen before I can feel fulfilled. I can feel happy. So that's a vision that we hold. And if you're not careful, you'll hold that 4-month vision forever. So your harvest is 4 months away. This day is gone, it's still 4 months away. This next day is gone, it's still 4 months away. You'll never reach it. That's why I focus on releasing this idea of soul evolution. We have to stop saying that we're evolving, because we will never reach where we want to go, where we want to be, if we keep saying that. Because every step forward that we take, it's like the magnet. You know, you put two magnets on a table and move one toward the other, it pushes it away. It never will get any closer unless you flip it, unless you flip that magnet. And that's flipping your vision, flipping your understanding of yourself. So it's a very important idea that the vision you hold of yourself may be pushing away the very thing you want. So we want to look at that, and we'll take a deeper look at that as we go. So that's step one, is forming a clear picture of what it is that you want. And that's what it is you want for you, for the way you feel, the way you see yourself, and so forth. Include yourself in that picture. Very important. Step two is know that you are working with law, with calm expectation of a corresponding result. You know that all necessary conditions will come about in proper order. This is another way of saying, whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe that you've received it. Know that you're working with law. Why would Jesus say that? To believe, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe you've received it. He's saying this very thing, form a vision. Believe you've received it. That's a vision. You see yourself in that situation. You see yourself as the freer person. You see yourself as maybe getting in touch with things that are dragging you down, that you didn't know, that you were not aware of. Elements in your own consciousness that need to be let go of. And maybe they are some real sacred cows to you. Maybe you don't think that giving up. What if somebody said, if you'll just give up worry, from this day forward, you'll be happy? How many of us would do that? Makes perfect sense that we'd be happy if we didn't worry. But I think most of us probably think, well, I wouldn't worry if I didn't have all these problems. But what if you could have the problem and not worry? Do you have that choice? Do you have that option? Is that a possibility? And the answer to that statement is yes. That is possible. If we are ever to be happy and content on this planet, we have to make peace with that. There's always going to be something that disturbs us. There's always going to be something that we want to change. There's always going to be some reason that we will have to say, I can't be happy under these circumstances. So if that's true, it's like I get up each day and kind of hold my finger up and see which way the wind's blowing, as to determine whether or not I'm going to be happy. So where does the spiritual thing come in? Are we using it to try to control outer conditions, try to make things different, try to fix it so we'll never have another problem as long as we live? I don't think that's going to happen. And I just keep going back to this idea of Jesus. You know, from the day he was born to the day he died, he had problems. He was always involved in some skirmish, some argument, somebody questioning, somebody challenging what he was doing. He was finally put to death. His earthly life is not an example of something I would like to live, that I would like to have. But the point is, his inner life is. He said he was not of this world. He was not of this outer thing that is going on all the time. So if we're thinking this outer thing that's going on all the time, if that's what needs to change before I can be happy, then we're missing the spiritual element. We're missing ourselves. We're leaving ourselves out. We're saying, I can't do it on my own. I must have this out here to make it happen. And I'm not saying by any means that we don't want to change circumstances or we just want to be happy with all of our limitations. There are things that we want to change. There are things we want to acquire, things we want to achieve, all of those things. But it's important for us to understand that we are already expressing life. We're already working with law. We're already doing something to influence the way our life unfolds. And that's what it is we're looking at. So we know that we're working with law and with calm expectation of a corresponding result. You know, all the necessary conditions will come about in proper order. So we have this vision of of the greater good that we want to experience in our life, instead of going out and trying to beat all the bushes, we enter our day with calm expectation that this greater good is now unfolding. And that's part of the changing of the process, is the calm expectation. It's like I'm not looking real hard, I'm not struggling real hard to try to make something happen. I'm working with calm expectation. Whatsoever I ask for in prayer, I believe that I've received it. Do I believe with my eyes squinted shut, and I white knuckle it through? Is that faith? Is that what Jesus is talking about? I don't think so. He's giving us a way to stop worrying, giving us a way, an understanding that we're working with law. You hold this picture, and that will demonstrate, not by your effort, but by a natural unfolding. And yes, there will be opportunities for you to do things to bring it about. It doesn't just magically show up in your life, but opportunities do. And you'll see those opportunities more when you're coming from a peaceful place than when you're coming from a place of worry. So the third step is enter your daily routine with a calm assurance the conditions are either present already or will soon present themselves. If you do not see evidence at once, know that the spiritual prototype, that is your desire, is already in existence. So that's the whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you've received it. The prototype, that desire, is already in existence. So when you hold that thought, you hold that idea, you do it from a level of peace, from the understanding that it is unfolding through you just as it should. We're trying to get some air going here, I think. So enter your daily routine with the calm assurance that conditions are either present already. And that's a pretty interesting thought to hold. Like you've got something going on in your life right now, and you're going through your life saying, the answer is already here. It's already present. It's present already. And what is left is for me to tune into it or to see it, but not to struggle to see it. That it's here already and it is now presenting itself in ways that are understandable. If you do not see evidence at once, know that the spiritual prototype is already in existence. So the seed is planted. We talked about last week, if you plant a seed, you don't see the things start sprouting immediately. And that's what the prototype or the desire is. And just keep in mind that you're holding something already, right now. You've got a seed, you've got an idea that you're holding of your life at this moment, and that seed is growing. It's expressing. It may not be the one you want, or it may be partially what you want. But you're already doing this. All of us are already practicing this. Our life, each life in this room is unique to every person in this room. We're all expressing a certain way. We're relating to the infinite, to the creative life force in a certain way. And the result is what we're experiencing in our own life. So I like this part 4, step 4. Wait until some circumstance pointing in the desired direction begins to show itself. It may be small, but it is the type and not the magnitude of the circumstance that is important. This is the first sprouting of the seed. So again, you're not trying to beat the bushes to get the answer. You're waiting. You planted the seed just like in the garden, and you wait. There's a waiting period. You wait until some circumstance pointing in the right direction begins to show itself. And that's when you act. As Emerson said, I prefer no action to misaction. And we get a lot of misaction in our life. We get a lot of, especially when we're worried about something. We put ourselves through a lot of stress and strain that is totally unnecessary, totally unneeded. So that's part of our normal existence. It's not natural. As I said last week, it's normal. Everybody worries. We all do it. So we're having to watch ourselves, and this kind of a system helps us do that, helps us be aware. So we have laid out the desire, and we wait until some circumstance pointing in the desired direction begins to show itself. And then we begin to act on that. And it doesn't matter how big it is, doesn't matter how small it is. What matters is something is there. Could be somebody comes into your life, says something that sparks an idea, or there is some type of opportunity that opens up that may be the smallest thing. If you're praying for prosperity, praying for more money, for example, you find a dime on the sidewalk. You pick it up and say, "Thank you, God. This is part of my unfolding process." Part of the unfolding of and it may be a very small thing, it may seem like a silly thing. But what we're doing is we're building expectation, we're building a consciousness in the direction that we want to go. And we're covering this today kind of fast, so don't worry about taking all this in. We'll take it a step at a time. Do calmly, without excitement, whatever the circumstance seems to require. This will lead to the further unfolding of other circumstances in the same direction. By addressing each one as it appears, you're moving step by step toward the accomplishment of your desire. So I like this thing. Something pops up, do it without excitement. And one of the only students that Troward ever had was talking about how she was saving money for a trip to go travel from America to England, where he was, to meet with Troward way back when. And that she used this plan, used this idea, and something popped up where somebody offered her some money for something, and she started getting excited. She said, "I had to work on not letting my excitement take over." You know what happens when you're depressed? You wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and everything seems horrible. When you're really excited, you can do the same thing. And you can get ahead of yourself. You can start inventing a world that you can really do nothing about. Excitement can keep you awake just as much as depression, as fear. And neither one of those are really healthy. So what he's saying is find a middle ground. Just do what comes to you without excitement. Don't put too much on it. I hear people say all the time, "I was praying for something and this or that happened, so from now on my life is perfect. God answered my prayer." And it's like we put too much on the manifestations that come, but we don't want to not put something on it. But you see what I mean? If you read a real good book, you feel like you're really getting a handle on things. And then that wears off. And then you need to read another real good book. And it's sort of like an addiction. You got to have that high, that fix. If you're praying for something, if you are visualizing something and you see manifestations of it, don't try to push the river. Back off from the whole thing. Just be thankful that here is a manifestation. Here's a good thing. So do calmly without excitement, whatever the circumstance seems to require. And this doesn't mean go around with a long face either. It just means don't read too much into the things that happen. Because I have had the experience, and I know you have too, of something happens that is in line with the expectation, with our vision. And you get excited about it. And then nothing happens after that, or it doesn't happen in the way that you think it should. And that's what I'm talking about. Something happens and we start projecting. We start laying out the groundwork of how this thing's going to unfold. And it so rarely does. It rarely unfolds the way that we are hoping or thinking that it will. So I think that's part of the reason that he's saying to back off. Do calmly without excitement, whatever the circumstance seems to require. This will lead to the further unfolding of other circumstances in the same direction. By addressing each one as it appears, you're moving step by step toward the accomplishment of your desire. Okay, So next week we'll go back to step 1 and just focus entirely on that aspect of it, and we'll move forward from there. All right, thanks for coming out.